Some 200 patients are still in the Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, but 8 have reportedly died from a lack of oxygen, and sewage is flooding emergency rooms. Israel has been searching the complex for the bodies of hostages they believe were held there by Hamas. And the Palestinian Red Crescent Society is warning that the Al-Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis could also be out of service soon. It has been under siege for weeks.
Well, the IDF search for Israeli hostages at the Nasser Hospital complex in Khan Yunis has turned up short. They have so far failed to find a single hostage. But nonetheless, the hospital complex, the largest hospital in the Southern Gaza region and in the town of Khan Yunis, is no longer functional following Israeli raids. Now, hundreds of people, including dozens of members of the hospital's staff, have been swept up in mass arrests by the Israeli Defense Forces. We'll get to details on that in just a moment. But first, let's talk about the state of the hospital itself. Gaza's health ministry said 136 patients and 25 staffers were stuck at the hospital without electricity, water, food, and resources for medical needs. The head of the World Health Organization said the hospital is not functional anymore. And Gaza officials said 8 patients died since Israeli troops stormed the complex on Friday and a power outage shut off the oxygen. You have to remember there are, Palestinian civilians, there are patients who were reliant on machines to provide them oxygen. So once the power goes out, once the oxygen runs out, their lives are over. So that's part of the reason why you see some of the patients losing their lives as a result of these hospital raids. The head of the World Health Organization continues to say that the cost of delays will be paid by patients' lives, adding that at least 20 people needed to be urgently referred to other hospitals to receive health care. Now, Israel's attacks on hospitals in the Gaza Strip have basically crippled the medical system in the region. Now, doctors and staff are forced to treat trauma injuries on the floor. They're operating without anesthesia, considering the fact that they don't have anesthesia or other medical supplies that they need to provide proper care. And they're also watching patients die when the power goes out and the oxygen depletes. Now, Israel justified its attacks on the Nasser Hospital by claiming that hostages were being kept there, but Israeli forces have not found the bodies of any hostages. And it's being reported as bodies of hostages because, how are you going to save hostages if you're bombing and shelling the hospital? Now, Israel, again, is justifying its attacks. They're also speaking to US lawmakers about their raid on the hospital. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant told Senators Chris Coons and Richard Blumenthal that Israeli troops have operated with great precision around Nasser and another hospital, Al-Amal, to apprehend militants with no resulting civilian casualties, a statement from his office said about the senator's Tel Aviv visit Sunday. Now, look, guys, obviously, no civilian casualties is a lie. We have good reason to believe that's a lie. I just shared details about 8 patients at that hospital losing their lives as a result of the raids and as a result of the power going out because of the raids. Also, there's other evidence that we've shared with you prior to doing this story today. For instance, a strike slammed into one of the hospital's wards. The strike killed 1 patient and wounded 6 others, all of whom were already being treated for previous wounds, according to Dr. Khalid Alser, one of the remaining surgeons at Nasser Hospital. This is reporting from last week from the Associated Press. It's very likely he could be one of the doctors who was swept up in the mass arrests of hospital workers, doctors, and staff. Prior to that, The Intercept also reported that according to the Ministry of Health, 7 civilians were killed on Monday. This again was last week in the courtyard of the hospital, and another 6 in the 2 days prior. 2 other civilians were killed on Tuesday in the hospital complex. And I just want to remind you all of what the scene looked like as the raids were underway. This is a video that was shot by one of the healthcare workers in the hospital. Let's take a quick look. So that same video, there's a lengthier version which we aired last week, shows that the hospital had partially collapsed as a result of the raids. Doesn't seem so precise to me, considering the fact that we're talking about a doctor who was still in the facility as it was being bombed. And I also want to just note that everyone should read an incredible piece that was published by the Los Angeles Times by an American doctor from Virginia who actually went into Gaza to provide care. She was there for about 10 days. And the piece is titled, "I'm an American doctor who went to Gaza. What I saw wasn't war, it was annihilation." And I want to read a few excerpts from that piece in just a moment, because it's important to know from an American what the situation on the ground really looks like. Before I do though, Cenk, I'd love for you to weigh in on Israel's allegation or Israel's claims that their raids were precise.
Yeah, so I want you to stick around to hear what that doctor said, because it's amazing and it gives you a sense of what's actually happening. And I'm going to read you something from the United Nations that explains the sexual assault and humiliation that Palestinian women and girls are going through in a minute too. But to be fair to Israel's claim that they rode in on unicorns and handed out flowers at the hospital, that's preposterous, and anyone believing IDF is so biased they can't see straight. No one else on planet Earth believes a word that they're saying. We see the video of the hospital being bombed. We see human rights groups saying that, yeah, of course, once they lost power, 8 people died. Let alone the fact that they laid siege to it, let alone the fact that there's 29,000 people dead, let alone the fact that all the other hospitals have been bombed, let alone the fact that they're doing now controlled demolition of almost all of Gaza, the universities, the colleges, the mosques, the schools, everything. Look, when I talk to people outside the country, they're like, "Are you guys still debating like hilarious Israeli propaganda? Like, do Americans, did all of your eyes get gouged out? Do you not see that all of Gaza is leveled? We're still having this debate as to what Israel's intentions are." Well, no one else on earth is, because they still have their eyes and ears, and they could clearly see what a brutal genocide that's happening. But wait till you hear the details.
So going back to the op-ed that was penned by an American doctor who provided healthcare to wounded Palestinians in Gaza, as we approached the European Gaza hospital, there were rows of tents that lined and blocked the streets. Many Palestinians gravitated toward this and other hospitals, hoping it would represent a sanctuary from the violence. They were wrong. A hospital designed to accommodate about 300 patients was now struggling to care for more than 1,000 patients and hundreds more seeking refuge. I began work immediately, performing 10 to 12 surgeries a day, working 14 to 16 hours at a time. We operated in unsterile settings that would have been unthinkable in the United States. We performed amputations of arms and legs daily using a giggly saw, a Civil War era tool, essentially a segment of barbed wire. Remember, they're amputating limbs from literal children. It's just so brutal reading about this. Many amputations could have been avoided if we'd had access to standard medical equipment. It was a struggle trying to care for all the injured within the constructs of a healthcare system that has utterly collapsed. And you also have the head of the World Health Organization saying that who is trying to get humanitarian aid into the hospital to provide aid to the patients who remain there. And they have been denied entry. They've been blocked repeatedly by the IDF and the Israeli government. Cenk.
Yes, well, the doctor also explained that they brought in children, 5 to 8 year olds who had been shot in the head seemingly by snipers. Unless they all coincidentally, the Israeli military is the worst military in the world if you believe Israel. They always miss, or almost always miss. They never intend to kill civilians, yet they kill more than anyone else, and 25 times as many civilians as Hamas. But when it comes to missing, they magically find 5-year-olds' brains and put a bullet right through it. And a series of them. 5 to 8 years old, they're all dead with bullet holes in their heads. But I'm sure it was yet another accident. So speaking of accidents, now let's go to the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner. They write about hundreds of Palestinian women and girls and how Israeli officials are treating them. I am now going to give you a direct quote. Many have reportedly been subject to inhuman and degrading treatment, denied menstruation pads, food and medicine, and severely beaten. On at least one occasion, Palestinian women detained in Gaza were allegedly kept in a cage in the rain and cold without food. Women in cages. Okay, we're not done yet. We are, quote, we are particularly distressed by reports that Palestinian women and girls in detention have also been subjected to multiple forms of sexual assault, such as being stripped naked and searched by male Israeli army officers. At least 2 female Palestinian detainees were reportedly raped, while others were reportedly threatened with rape and sexual violence, the experts said. They also noted that photos of female detainees in degrading circumstances were also reportedly taken by the Israeli army and uploaded online. Remember that when Hamas committed sexual assault, along with the murder and degradation, etc., that happened on October 7th, that justified killing 29,000 Palestinians, destroying all of Gaza, and doing all of this back. You see how that logic never ends? Then the violence never ends. And both sides do it to each other endlessly. Now, if you think that the Palestinians are the violent ones, the Palestinians are the ones that are the powerful, that are victimizing tiny little Israel who can't defend itself, and that Israel has never done anything wrong. They're filled with angels who are just constantly trying to protect Palestinian civilians. But oh golly gee, they hit him in the head with a bullet, or they raped them, or they locked them in a cage, or they stripped them naked, whether it's the men or the women, and made fun of them by putting their pictures online. Golly gee, I wonder how that happened. But I'm sure none of that happened, even though every authoritative independent source says that it did. But here in America, the reason I get upset, other than the fact that these people are being brutalized and no one in power cares. The people in power in this country are monsters. They're the worst people on earth. They don't care about other human beings at all. They fund these atrocities through our taxpayer money. But I'm also sick of the gaslighting, where the Palestinians are the bad guys and the people doing the 75 years of occupation, humiliation, and now tens of thousands of dead innocent women and children are purely good guys. No, we're all human beings. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. America has given Israel, in essence, absolute power. And not only is it brutalizing the Palestinians, but it's also corrupting the core of Israel. It doesn't do anyone any good. But drunk on power, America and Israel continue to do mass violence with no check in sight.
If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.